Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Samuel, Shmuel Bet. We are up to chapter 8. In the previous chapter 7, we read how David wanted to build a temple to God, and God told him no. And the message that David received from that was that his job was to get the kingdom established firmly so that his descendant, his son, and his descendants after that, they will be the ones who, living in a secure and firm kingdom, they can go and build a temple to God for the purpose of uplifting themselves. But until then, it was David's job to get everything established. So he looked around and clearly saw that he wasn't quite finished yet. And that is what we're going to see now. He may have been living in peace, but there were still many enemies to subdue and borders to secure before the nation could actually be secure. So vayi achrei chen, it was after this. And when it says the words after this, it's specifying clearly that I want you to know that this is chronological, because sometimes it lists, conquests, and it's not necessarily chronological. It means, and he conquered this, these, those. Then it tells a story. Here it's saying, no. After David was turned down, he then recognized and realized that he has more work to do. So, Vayach David et Pilishtim, David struck down the Philistines. Now, we've been hearing about the Philistines quite a bit. They keep coming up as enemies, and this just goes to show they were still there. They were still a potential threat. David needed to get rid of that threat in order to establish the kingdom. Vayach Ni'em, and finally, he subdued the Philistines. Vayikach David et Meteg ha'amah. And David took Meteg ha'amah from the hands of the Philistines. Now, what does this mean, Meteg ha'amah? In a similar verse in Chronicles, in Divrei Hayamim, it says David took and conquered the city of Gat, which is a very prominent, if not the most prominent city of the Philistines, which we've mentioned many times until now. So maybe Meteg Ha'amah is just another name for the word Gat, which is the way many of the traditional commentaries understand it. There's some scholars argue, and I really like this interpretation, but I guess you can decide for yourselves, is that this word Meteg is really, it's an ancient Semitic word that really means the bridle or the reins, like of a horse. And ha'amah is the cubit of the arm, in other words, the bridle of the arm. And that this could actually mean something else entirely. What this means is, and David subdued the Philistines, which it said in the first half of the verse, that David struck down and subdued the Philistines, and he took the bridle of the saddle from the arms of the Philistines. In other words, it's a indication of subjugation, that the Philistines gave him the hand of the reins, so to speak, to be the ruler, and the Philistines basically signed a treaty that we're not going to bother you anymore, and we're subdued under you. And that's consistent with the rest of the chapter, where David, after conquering those armies, he went to the surrounding nations, subdued them, had them pay tribute to his kingdom, which would be the foundation of the building of the new kingdom, the wealth of the new kingdom, and in this way keep them from becoming enemies and potential attackers. So, and then he went and continued Vayachet Moab, and he struck down Moab, the nation of Moab, and then Vayimadedem Bachevel, and he measured off with a rope Hashkevo some arza, had them lie down on the ground and measured them, counted out the captives, the subdued soldiers, by Madej Shnei Chavalim Lahamis, and he laid out one measure by lying next to a rope to be put to death in order to subjugate the enemy army, to take their strength away. But one group he kept alive, Lachayot, again in order, the same theme, to keep them. He wanted their nation to continue in order that they can be subjects of David. Vatihi Moav leDavid. So therefore Moab now belonged to David la'avadim as servants. Nosei mincha, those who can now bring tribute to the new newly developing kingdom of David. Vayach David et Hadad Ezer ben Rechov melech Tzova. This is a little bit farther to the north and to the east. He struck down Hadad Ezer, the king of Tzova. Now we're going up to the northern parts, north to parts of Syria and east towards the Euphrates. La Shivya Do ben Harparas, in order to continue to spread his kingdom all the way, the power and influence of his kingdom all the way towards the river Euphrates. Vayilko David mimenu elef u'shma parashim, and from him, from Hadad Ezer, he captured 1,700 chariots, v'esrim elef ish ragli, and 20,000 foot soldiers. Vaya'aker David et kol harechav v'yoser mimenu mei harechav, and David injured the horses so that they could no longer be used as weapons of war, and made them lame. But he kept 100 chariots, which he retained, presumably for his own use in his own war. Aram Damesek, and the nearby Arameans of Damascus came La'azor to help Lahadad Ezer Melech Tzova, because they were allies. So they came to help him out. But David ba'aram esrim v'shnayim alafish, and he struck down 22,000 of their soldiers. Vayasem David nitzivim, and now again emphasizing this idea, David then established garrisons, or posts in Aram Damesek. Vatahi Aram li David, and now the Arameans, the area of Aram, became subservient to David, la'avodim, as servants, nosei mincha, those that carry tribute to the central center of the kingdom, which was in Jerusalem. Vayosha Adonai es David b'chol asher halach, and God saved him and gave him and allowed him to be victorious and win no matter where he went, all of the wars and battles that he undertook. Vayikach David et shiltei hazahav, and David took the golden shields, asher hayu alav de Hadad Ezer vayivhem Yushalayim, that the servants of Hadad Ezer were carrying, presumably as a symbol of their strength and their wealth. Now that it was captured, he took them and brought them to Jerusalem. So this is the beginning of collecting the metals, precious metals that would be needed eventually in the temple later on. Mi Betach, mi Beirosai, Ore Hadad Ezer, and from the cities of Betach and Beirotai, which were cities under Hadad Ezer, Lokach HaMelech David Nechoshes Harbei Me'od, he took a lot of copper. Vayishma Toi Melech Hamas, when Toi, the king of Hamas, heard Ki Hikad David et Kol Chel Hadad Ezer, that David had struck down the entire might of the army of Hadad Ezer, Toi being a previous enemy of Hadad Ezer, so Vayishlach Toi et Yoram Beno, Toi sent his son Yoram El Melech David as a messenger to the King David, L'Shalom, to ask in peace, to sign a peace treaty, Levarcho, and to bless him. Al Asher Nilcham b'Hadad Ezer ve'akeu, bless him and thank him because he had struck down Hadad Ezer. Ki ish milchamos Toi haya Hadad Ezer, because Hadad Ezer was at war with Toi, so Toi now was happy that David helped him out. Uviyado, and he carried with him tributes of hayu klei chesed v'klei zav v'klei nechoshes, items made of silver, copper, and gold. So again, he brought tribute to David, demonstrating thanks to David, and on a certain level, subjugation as well. So Gam Osam Hiktish HaMelech David L'Adonai, so David made those holy for God, set them aside for God. Im HaKesef Yazav Asher Hiktish, together with the silver and gold that he had done Michal Agayim from all the nations Asher Kibesh that he had conquered. Umi Aram, Umi Moav, Umi Ammon, Umi Plishtim, Umi Amalek. Now just listing those countries from Aramea, or Aram, from Moab, from Ammon, from the Philistines, from Amalek, Umishlalal Hadad Ezer ben Rechov Melech Tzova, and from the booty of, from the conquering of Hadad Ezer, which we just mentioned. So now Vayas David Sham Beshuvo Mehakoso Es Aram Begay Melach. David made for himself a great reputation as he returned from striking down the Arameans in the Valley of Salt. That's the location, Shemona Asar Aleph, He struck down 18,000 of their soldiers. Vayasam be'edom, and in Edom, he placed nitzivim, garrisons, posts, military posts, b'chol Edom, across the entire Edom. Some nitzivim, he placed military posts. Vayichol Edom avadim David, and Edom became servants to David. This is, of course, highly significant in the grand scheme, as Edom, of course, represents the children of Esav, the descendants of the brother of Yaakov. And here we have Yaakov and his descendant David becoming powerful and ruling over their cousins. Vayosha Adonai es David b'chol asher halach. Again, same phrase as before. God saved David and helped him be victorious in whatever he undertook. Vayimloch David al kol Yisrael, and David became the king over the entire Israel. Again, emphasizing that he was the king over the entire United Kingdom. And this is crucial. Vayi David oseh mishpat u'tzedakah l'chol amo. And David did and ruled with mishpat, with true justice, u'tzedakah, and righteousness, l'chol amo, for his entire nation, emphasizing David's appropriate and ethical and moral rule over the people. Vayivi Yoav ben Tzruya al Atzava. Yoav ben Tzruya was the general over the army. V'Yoshaphat ben Achilud mazkir. And Yoshaphat, son of Achilud, was the official scribe who recorded the events and the archives. V'Tzadok ben Achituv, and Tzadok, the son of Achituv, v'Achimelech ben Eviasor Kohanim, and they were the children of Eviasar. Remember, Eviasar was the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and their sons were also priests, of course, as their father was. Usuraya Sofer, and Suraya was the Sofer, was the scribe. So I said before, Yehoshaphat was the Mazkir, was the recorder. Apparently that sounds like something more akin to an accountant, where Sofer is more of a scribe. Uvenayahu ben Yehoyada Vihakresi, Vihaplesi, and Benayahu ben Yehoyada, and the Kresi and the Plesi, which it's very difficult to understand and know what exactly they mean, but these are some sort of groups of soldiers, shock troops of some sort. Uvnei David, and the sons of David, Kohanim Hayu, they were priests. Now, this always raises the question, how could it be that the sons of David were priests? The simplest way of understanding is, until the temple was built, although there were Kohanim, there were priests that were Kohanim, descendants of Aaron, the high priest, others were also able to bring sacrifices, so it's possible that David's children were Kohanim, were priests, or it could also just mean David, the sons of David, were Kohanim, they were high officials, or they were honored officials of some sort, and the word Kohen here means the same as it sometimes means, as opposed to a specific priest, but it means a Kohen, just a high official. So this concludes chapter 8, and in this chapter we see how David worked hard to solidify the borders, make alliances with allies, subdue potential and current enemies, gather wealth for the kingdom, set up a kingdom of justice and righteousness. So there was still a lot of work left to do, which makes us understand even more the previous chapter, where God said, it's not time to build a house yet. You still got a lot of work to do. Not time to build a house for me yet, God says. You still got a lot of work to do. When you finish, when you hand over the kingdom in peace to your son, then it'll be his turn. So that concludes chapter 8. Thank you so much for studying chapter 8 together with me. Looking forward to studying chapter 9 and, of course, the rest of this beautiful book of Samuel together.